we're now going to talk about some of the ways in which government regulation, or what the government has decided to allow, is actually reducing the amount of arable farmland in the United States. The next speaker is my dear friend, who has helped enormously with Door to Freedom, Brook DeLorme, who is a writer, artist, businesswoman, and expert on anything she wants to learn about. She is going to talk about two things that are happening now: how solar panels are breaking up farmland, and how transmission lines are being drawn across the maps of the United States to break up farmlands. Brianna briefly mentioned this, that farms are being bisected for some reason because of state and federal rules that are coming up. So, Brooke, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brook DeLorme. I'm going to talk to you today about the changes in our rural and agrarian landscapes because of the energy transition. And this means installations of solar panels, wind turbines, and transmission lines. I would encourage you to stop calling these solar farms or wind farms, because farms create food and these don't. I was living off-grid in a small town in central Maine on a farm, and just about a year ago exactly, I heard about a major high-voltage transmission line proposed through our town, as well as through nearly 40 other tiny towns in central Maine. This transmission corridor was intended to be 150 miles long, would have cut through hundreds of acres of farmland and thousands of acres of forests. It was intended to connect wind turbines in northern Maine to southern Maine and Massachusetts. Projects like this are happening all over the country now. Rural spaces are being what I feel is destroyed by what are, in truth, industrial scale electrical installations. On this slide, you see a short list of projects that I've been watching in our area. And so what is this energy transition? It's the political choice to switch from the older methods of generating electricity, i.e. fossil fuels, to wind and solar primarily. It's paired with the ever-increasing demand for electricity as we change our motor vehicles and devices. To make this electricity requires solar panel fields, onshore wind and offshore wind. And to move it requires more high-voltage transmission lines. Because it is intermittent, we will need much, much more battery storage. And this will cost, and is costing, billions and billions and billions of dollars. Net zero is the term to describe a state of affairs where human activities emit no more greenhouse gases than are removed. It's also generally a synonym for carbon neutral or climate neutral. And many governments have put in place net zero goals. There are 6 states in New England. 5 of those states have very reaching net zero goals. You see the list below. Highlighted in blue, we have the energy goals. Energy doesn't just mean electricity. If they're using the term accurately, energy includes heating fuels and motor vehicle fuels. Of course, to meet these 2030, 2040, or 2050 goals, it makes sense to ask, what's going on right now? How are these states making electricity right now? And why are electricity prices going up so much? One reason in Maine is something called net energy billing. Net energy billing has become a political maneuver where the government subsidizes or incentivizes certain types of electricity generation at the cost of others. The actual term is neutral. It simply refers to paying only for the net of what you generate and use in a grid-connected system. Many homeowners are now familiar with the idea that you can put solar panels on your house and your electric bill will go to zero. You still have to pay the connection cost, which in Maine is around $26, I think. That's because in the summer you might generate more than you use, and you have those credits available to offset your billing in the winter. However, because of a complicated thing called stranded costs, utilities are able to charge ratepayers for the difference between what they planned to be paid for and what they were paid for. When industrial scale operations get into the mix, it creates an enormous financial burden. In Maine, it's currently estimated that this will cost all Maine ratepayers an additional $220 million per year for the next 20 years in Maine, over $4 billion total. This has increased residential bills by $15 to $30 per month, but small industrial facilities, including renewable energy generators, such as wood chip manufacturers, are seeing public policy increases of a fixed cost of $6,000 per month. Can you imagine? The thing that interests me most is actually how these solar panels and wind turbines require so much land. Because if you drive around rural Maine now, you'll see roads lined with solar panel installations where there used to be fields. The one below is in Farmington. These fields of solar panels can't be put in suburbia because they're huge. So they're put out in rural areas. The one in this picture is around 500 acres. It's around 50 miles from a major load center. And the blue polygon represents 1 megawatt of generation. Some of these fields used to be an organic dairy. To give a sense of scale, a megawatt is between 1/1500th and 1/5000th the amount of electricity required in Maine. And in this chart, there's a comparison to old-fashioned methods of generating electricity. It's not to say that we should go back to these old-fashioned methods, but it's to highlight the fact that if these megawattages must be generated using solar or wind, the land acreage demands are enormous, and they're falling on the backs of rural people in rural landscapes. It's the same with wind. Wind needs cleared acreage of about 4.5 acres of trees per megawatt. This is a picture of what a wind installation looks like in northern Maine. They run along ridge tops, and the turbines are hundreds of feet tall, so that they don't need to clear apart from the area directly underneath the turbine. But the project sizes end up being huge because they don't get put near population centers. And this is an example of an early wind installation. It's a tiny town in northern Maine called Mars Hill. It was one of the first installations in Maine, and the turbines were supposed to be silent and have no impact on the residents. But of course, there was an impact. The residents sued. There was a settlement with a financial payment. And now there aren't wind turbines being installed near population centers at all. So I took some time and mapped out the large wind installations in Maine to try to get a sense of what the actual project sizes are. And these are estimates because it's not always possible to tell where the boundaries are, but when looking at aerial imagery, you can often see the approximate boundaries. Based on my measurements, the actual project size required for wind is 78 acres per megawatt, and that's after removing the high outliers, the 2 higher outliers. And with solar installations, we're seeing about 5 acres per megawatt cleared, and they're being put nearer population centers, but only rural population centers. This blue polygon is on what I understand to be a former potato field in a tiny town called Milo, Maine. It's around 150 miles from a population center of over 50,000 people. So why don't farmers and rural residents like these things? There are the practical reasons, and there are the cultural, financial reasons. The practical reasons are the property values decline when they're in proximity to industrial electrical infrastructure. There's noise pollution, substations are required, there's electrical buzzing, there's stray voltage, which is a fascinating, problematic thing for dairy farmers. Soil compaction after construction. It's more difficult to manage crops near high voltage installations, and pollinators are known to be disturbed and disoriented by the changed electromagnetic fields. It enriches large out-of-state corporations. And as we saw with the net energy billing example in Maine, it creates an enormous cost that is spread around to everyone. There are a lot of studies about property value devaluation near transmission lines, since transmission lines have been prevalent for almost 100 years. Many of these studies were paid for by utility companies, which means they're biased, but the independent studies show up to a 44% property value diminution when in proximity to a high voltage transmission line. I'm guessing that similar impacts to property values will be seen near other industrial electrical infrastructure. I won't read you this slide, but these are some references about independent property value impacts. And the other really important thing we need to talk about is eminent domain laws. So when we're talking transmission lines, there's a really terrible Supreme Court ruling from 2005 called Kelo versus New London, which held essentially that governments can use eminent domain to take land from private owners and give it to private companies who are making a profit on it. Many states have put in place laws to prevent that. Institute for Justice, this link, has a list of states that have changed their laws, and you can see how your state ranks. Maine was one of the worst states, but we worked to change the law to something similar to what is called a buy the farm provision. A buy the farm provision means that if eminent domain is going to be used, the utility must offer market value for the entire property. They can't just purchase an easement through it. So 2 states now that I know of have buy the farm provisions, Minnesota and Maine. And it's one of the most important things you can do to work to protect rural landscapes and to protect rural landowners, to protect farmers. So work with your state legislature to fix the eminent domain laws in your state, and then work with your municipality to put in place ordinances regulating the installation of industrial energy infrastructure. And this includes commercial solar, commercial wind, substations, battery storage, and high voltage transmission lines. Obviously, every state will have different rules. Every municipality and county will have different rules about how these things can be implemented. Maine has home rule, which allows towns to put in place ordinances regulating how anything is installed. I hope that was helpful. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Brooke. That was very informative. What we're going to do now is take a 5-minute bathroom break. And so I will see everybody back in 5 minutes when we will learn about